I like to tell the joke that there's a team of scientists and a team of philosophers climbing the mountain of truth. The team of scientists gets to the top and they look over the summit, and what do they see? The team of philosophers that got there 2,000 years before them. Okay? I like that joke a lot, especially for what we're going to be talking about again. If you're waiting for the science to catch up, well, the good news, it is catching up. All it's going to do, though, is eventually show you that the philosophers already figured it out, okay? We'll be talking about things that have really been around as concepts for thousands of years. But now we're getting to the point where you can see, sure enough, turns out scientifically it's true as well. You still need to take the leap of faith, though. Science, like Einstein once said, you could look into a cave and see or you can see a lion's tail coming out of a cave. You can't see the lion, but you see the tail. You can assume that there's a lion in there, though, okay? Well, the science shows us, it will show us that the philosophers were right. You know, the Jesuses and the Krishnas and the Buddhas and the Mohammeds and all them, Socrates and Plato, but boy, they were onto some stuff. And we're going to walk you through some really cool science that there's thought experiments. It's actually sort of philosophical science today that back up why I've been talking about Schrodinger's cat, and I've left the cats up here. If I said to you what Schrodinger's cat, do you know what it means? Okay, Schrodinger's cat is teaching the nature of superposition. The idea that a cat, before you interact with it, is in one of two states, alive or dead. Superposition would actually imply that there's an infinite number of potential states. Okay, but for simplicity's purposes, it's just alive or dead, and then when you interact with it, it's going to be one or the other. And that was Schrodinger saying, well, this is the nature of the physics that we're seeing. So we're going to take that up a couple notches, referring to two different thought experiments, one by the name of Wigner's friend and the other the Frauchiger-Renner thought experiment. Frauchiger-Renner thought experiment. And both of them are suggesting about the same sort of thing. They're looking at the quantum physics, and they're doing a thought experiment about the nature of what quantum physics is suggesting. And when they walk through the thought experiment, it leads you to this paradox that makes you go, wait a minute, how could that be? So they're both suggesting the same basic thing, so I'll just do it generally. It's basically observers of observers. In the Schrodinger's cat, if you understand that, what determines the state of the cat? The observer, once the observer interacts with the cat, whatever's in the box, and all of a sudden the cat's going to be one or the other. What if you have an observer observing that experiment? Both of these thought experiments are describing the idea in Wigner's friend. Wigner's a scientist, Eugene Wigner, and he has a friend that's in a lab, and I'm just going to make it simple by referring to a coin flip. And if someone is in a lab and he flips a coin, it's going to be heads or tails. But what if that lab is being observed by someone outside of that lab, Wigner himself, and he has not yet interacted with his friend inside the lab? So the friend knows it's heads or tails. So it's a box within a box, right? So the scientist that's looking at the lab hasn't interacted with it yet, and yet the friend is inside there, he's interacted with it. So to the friend, it's heads or tails. He's already got the answer. But to the scientist observing the lab from the outside, it's still in superposition. So it's not been determined yet, is it? Has it? So which is it? Is it heads or tails, or is it still in the indeterminate state? The thought experiment says, guess what? It's both. It's both. If we're going to embrace Schrodinger's cat, we have to embrace the level up. Is that, wait a minute, so that guy already has the cat figured out, the state of the cat figured out, but the one who hasn't interacted with it yet, still not figured out. So now the cat's both figured out and not figured out. The Frauchiger-Renner thought experiment takes that up a couple notches, and I think it involves like 4 different labs, and it's a lot more complicated, but the basic idea is this. If we could have a ping pong, like in the lottery, you know, a number, just say between 1 and 10 or whatever, shows up, and like you would look at it and you'd see a 3, and you'd look at it and you'd see a 7, and you'd look at it and see an 8. Guess what? According to the thought experiment and the physics, each of those could be correct. You'd be right from your perspective. You'd be right from your perspective. And that the physics is backing that up, okay? And suggesting this could be totally possible. What's the takeaway? Either they're really missing something in the physics, like they're way off base somehow. The scientists still have a lot of work to do, which I guess is possible, but they've really figured out they've tested and retested this stuff so much that quantum physics seems to be pretty airtight. Or, and I asked AI this directly, I wanted to hear what it said, AI said, or objective reality may not be possible. And that's why these Wigner and the Frauchiger-Renner, they all did this experiment in the first place. Because you know what they're saying? Facts aren't real. Because a fact to this person, hey, this person might actually experience it differently. And there's no way of proving it. You're convinced that it's heads. But according to that guy who's not interacted with it yet, it's neither. But this experiment suggests that one's seeing heads, that one's seeing tails. Oh my goodness. And so, of course, most of the scientists go, this is insane. Well, that can't be it. Well, back to the drawing board. Well, good luck. Because AI is suggesting the many worlds interpretation is what's favored. The many worlds interpretation came out in the 1950s, and it resolved a lot of the paradoxes by suggesting this. Each one of us, similar to Einstein's relativity, each one of us has our own world. And all we are doing is interacting with each other. I'm interacting with your world, you're interacting with mine. Therefore, it's actually possible for us to observe things differently. There's not an objective reality. And when we get to the end of this, using the philosophy, it actually starts to make a little bit of sense. Because we're not here to decide heads or tails, or is the cat alive or dead, or what's the lottery tickets. That's not what it's about. We're here to do something a lot more profound than that, which includes joining with people who might disagree with us, okay, on the level of the greatest philosophers, okay? So the idea of there is no objective reality really jives with some stuff that I've left up here for a couple weeks. Now, we talked a couple weeks ago in one of my other groups from the Course in Miracles, these wonderful lines. The alertness of the ego to the errors of other egos is not the kind of vigilance the Holy Spirit would have you maintain. It's not our job to point out to other people how they're wrong, as Jesus and Buddha both said in their own way. Strive for your own liberation with diligence, said the Buddha. Jesus, don't worry about us specking your neighbors out when you have a log in your own. That's not what it's about. We're not supposed to be telling other people why they're wrong. And this line, from straight up, same chapter in Course in Miracles, errors are of the ego. Whatever errors you think exists in humans, it comes from ego, which is the perception of the individual self different from each other. That's where errors come from. If someone is speaking from the ego, he will not make sense, says the Course in Miracles. Of course, if it's from the ego, it won't make sense. Your task, however, is to tell him that he's right. Well, that's fascinating. Coming from, it's definitely an error, but you're supposed to say that he's right. Then it says this wonderful line, do not tell him this verbally. Okay, I love that. This isn't confirming heads, tails. I see heads, you see tails. Yeah, you're right, because I'm seeing heads. I don't know what you're seeing. You might be thinking you're seeing that. You also might be right. I don't know. All I know is I'm seeing heads. I'm not supposed to be saying to you, well, you're right, you're seeing it the right way. It's an energetic thing. It's a spiritual thing. The next line is correction is at another level. Because if we're working from the ego, your ego is separate from my ego because I have a different life experience than you do. And a lot of different labels as a result. And that person has a different one and that person has a different one all throughout the world, okay? The correction from the other level is the unity. It is the Christ. It's realizing, well, you could perceive this differently. And you could shift and perceive people differently, and life and reality differently. You could back off labels and get on to truth, things like that. And if we did that, we're going to correct each other. How is that happening? It's through what AI also said a couple weeks ago. It's through radiating a certain knowing. It's a healing that happens that's spiritual. We feel better whenever the Holy Spirit's coursing through our bodies, right? Well, so will the other person. And so the verbal correction is not what needs to happen. But why is it you would be telling them that they're right? According to these experiments and the way the physics works, they are seeing it like that. I've worked with plenty of people who've used psychedelics, and I asked them about what they experienced. They are totally convinced they saw those things because they did, right? And then that's probably wrong, just a trip or whatever. No, they saw those things. I've worked with some schizophrenics who are completely convinced they're seeing things. I don't tell them that they're not seeing those things. They are seeing those things. Whether or not it's functional and practical is what we want to work on, you know? If we are arguing over things and someone is literally seeing it that way because it's what they're seeing in front of us and we're arguing with them, boy, wouldn't that be crazy? And wouldn't it be a wonderful way for the universe, God, or however you want to think of it, to show us how to level up, how to get out of our ego, how to be okay with someone else that disagrees with you, still love them. Doesn't mean you tell them that they're right verbally. Like I always say, it doesn't mean you vote for them. but it does mean you have to join them on a certain level. So it jives, that concept jives also with what I describe as we move into what this is suggesting. It's because we're in a dream. We're not in an objective reality. Your dream at night is not if you have a dream at night, it's not objective reality. It's a subset of the reality that we're used to. We're currently in the subset of a reality. The word Buddha means to wake up. How do we function in such a dreamlike state? One, I was talking with someone earlier today about the nature of this world and why it's so important to go with the flow. Especially if you're having an argument or a disagreement or something's challenging or whatever. There has to be a feature of us that's more allowing, right? Let's go with the flow. And the idea of a swing worked. It works pretty well. She says she loves to swing, just to go back, and then she's an adult woman who loves to use her kids' swing. Well, what are you supposed to do when you're on a swing? Are you supposed to resist? Or are you supposed to go with the flow of it? And what happens if you try to wiggle inside the swing, or somebody tries to stop the flow of the swing? What happens really quick? It gets off center. But isn't it really nice to just sort of go with the flow of the swing? It's quite rhythmic in so many ways. Well, that reminds me specifically of the Tao and all its teachings of what going with the flow is. That's the point. Hermes teaches the law of rhythm, the laws of the highs and the lows. We're all going to go through it. We're going to have experiences that aren't pleasant, that don't sort of jive with us, but we're also going to have good experiences, and it's going to go back and forth. Arguing over the ones that we don't like, that's not going to get us there. We have to learn how to go with the flow of it, right? What would that mean when someone's disagreeing with us? No, you don't need to say, you're wrong and here's why you're wrong. That's not effective. What works is the Christ or the Buddha or the spirit within, and you can join with that person that way. That's why we get to how to handle a dream. The dream that we're in, Corinthians explains it pretty well. The idea of we're all in a dreamlike state, to waken up to that is I think found in Corinthians, which describes love quite nicely. Corinthians 13. It starts with, if you speak in the tongue of men and angels, but you have not love, you're a noisy gong and a clanging cymbal. What does that mean? You might be wonderfully verbally poetic, but if you're not loving everyone and everything, then it's a noisy gong and a clanging cymbal. And it doesn't work. That's been the point. That's why human beings have been arguing for thousands of years over this stuff and not getting anywhere, because if it's just verbal. But what if it's love-based? What if you have love, authentic, dreamlike, high-level love, agape style, and then you try to talk to the person? Then it works. Then it's like bait. Then you have a spirit about you. It's so much more effective. So the teaching goes on. Love is patient. That's a good way to wake up in the dream. Love is kind. Love isn't irritable, right? If you're irritable, you're not waking up and you're stuck in the dream. Love doesn't envy. Love isn't rude. These are characteristics we all recognize. How good are we at these personally, right? Love does not insist on its own way. If you want to awaken in the dream, you can't insist on your own way. Jesus, again, not my will be done, but thy will. He wasn't interested. Well, he wanted things to go differently, but he had to surrender to that. Things just don't always go our way. If you allow that, if you surrender, again, this doesn't mean you have to physically surrender. It's a mental thing. Then you're going to facilitate your own awakening in the dream. Love is not resentful. Love endures all things. Okay? Meaning get through it. I sometimes tell people endurance is the most valuable emotional mental health skill there is. Just hang in there. Eventually it's going to get better. And then my favorite line almost of all throughout the Bible, love sees in a mirror dimly. And here's why I left this drawing up here from a month or so ago. Here we have the truth. The truth is we are characters. When I was writing this earlier, I thought, wait a minute. Character, that's very similar to care actors. Character, care actor, get it? We are actors, like Shakespeare said. We're actors and actresses on a stage. We're on a play. Hinduism, they call it Leela. We're spiritual beings having a physical experience, and we're likened unto characters. Now, you could be a character in which you don't remember that you're actually a higher level spiritual conscious being, or you can come be a care actor, which is to care for the other actors in the play. Okay? You actually want to care about these characters in the play because they're just costumes, right? We give up the costumes when we die. That's the awakening. What's born again? I'm not this thing. I'm this thing. Here I drew it as the spirit blob. We're loaded with truth. That's you. That's who you really are. You take on a character for a while. Now you have these other beings who are also truth, but they've taken on a character for a while. How much have they figured that out yet? Is it your job to tell them that they're wrong? Well, guess what? According to the physics, they might be right from their perspective. They might literally be seeing something different. Certainly from a relative perspective, it's obvious. Some people speak French, some Russian, some are atheists, some are Muslims, whatever. Everybody has different tastes in food and music and on and on and on because of where we were born. So they're going to have a different physical truth. But if it turns out that they have the same ultimate truth, we're spiritual beings having a collective dream experience together. You've taken on a character, you've taken on a character, you've taken on a character. Awakening is remembering that. You still can be your character. Now you're a character, though. Now you want to help them wake up. So you see your truth and their truth. Here I wrote them, but that's also you. Because it's the same game. Everyone's playing it. The only way out of it is to add this to the system. To add the love, the spirit, as the Tao Te Ching says. Can you play the feminine role and bring the Tao to earth? Or in the Lord's Prayer, on earth that is in heaven, the Holy Spirit as it's in you, or whatever word you want to use, that type of love. Now you can engage with this person. I've got in quotes here again, of course, because it's just their character. And so is it possible, as we're finding, that other people can actually see things differently and be right? And the physics is suggesting, yeah, that's true. A lot of people aren't going to like that, but those are people that are trying to control the nature of the world, right? Good luck with that. All of the greatest prophets suggest something different. Remember, Islam means to surrender or to submit. Submit to the forces of the world that are suggesting something different. Your job is to learn how to love all of that, right? All of it without exception. That wakens you up. It's why we see in a mirror dimly. So here, this line was there for a month now. I wrote the word mirror there. What is actually going on? Other people are always reflecting back to you where you're at in this process. It's a dim mirror because who knows this is happening, right? We're all coming from the same source. All of us come from, whether you like the word heaven or spirit or nirvana or whatever, we come from the same source, and we break off into these separate characters. What we do is use each other to learn, to somehow wake up. You don't have to agree with them. I've said that plenty. You don't have to eat their food. You don't have to vote for them. You don't have to like their music, but you do have to love them. That's the point of seeing in a mirror dimly. So if you engage with someone that you disagree with, according to these thought experiments, you can disagree with them with love. You don't even have to argue with them that they're wrong, okay? You could objectively see the truth, like I love to think of Jesus on the cross. At the very end of this process, was he screaming at the end, "You guys are wrong for doing this"? No, he knew he was right. He demonstrated it. He just was radiating spirit. He was radiating knowing. That put the spirit into the world, and if you learn from it, that's what he's saying. That's all you're supposed to do. That's all you have to do. You get better at the game along the way for sure, but in the end, you get the job done. Love another as oneself.